want to good afternoon, and I want to thank you for coming to our Saturday luncheon. And we have a really great speaker ahead of us. At an earlier session at the conference, someone made the point. I've actually heard this many times at the conference, and it's certainly core to me, and I think it's core to many of us at the foundation, and more broadly, everyone in industry, everyone who cares about space. What I've heard is what we're trying to do is democratize space. And we want to democratize that for everyone. And that's a really powerful vision, because that means that everyone participates in space. Everyone gets advantaged. Everyone gets value. And that's where our speaker comes in. It's my pleasure to introduce Donna Edwards. She's the current Congresswoman from Maryland's 4th District. She is the ranking member of the Space Subcommittee. And she's not a new person in space, as many of you know. She actually originally started at Lockheed Martin in the early 80s. So I want to welcome her to come to speak, and I want you to translate it for her.
Thank you, Aaron. There was so much conversation. It's so silent now. It's kind of scary. You know, in Congress, when it gets quiet, you get worried. I really appreciate being here. I want to say a special thanks to Aaron and Rebecca for making sure that I could get up this morning at 4:30 in the morning and be here in time for lunch. Cheers. I was looking over the agenda, and one of the things that I noticed, and to our friends at ATK, the lightning pitch competition, I really wish I had been here. It's sort of like speed dating for space. But it sounds like you all have had quite a robust and full agenda, and I just appreciate your invitation. You know, for this 2014 conference and for the foundation, you've been doing this for what, 26 years, and I think that I read someplace that you consider yourselves disruptors, which is quite an interesting term for this one member of Congress who came into Congress disrupting a little bit, and so I can identify with that. I want to say hi also to my good friend Gabriel Rothblatt, who's a candidate for the 8th Congressional District in Florida. Is that right? Yeah. Thanks. Good to see you. The Space Coast. Good to see you. You know, I know that for me, space exploration and the idea of space exploration has just been a real passion. I'm one of the sort of, I don't know, black and white television, you know, Apollo babies. But I was at something, I think it was yesterday. Oh yeah, it was at our space subcommittee hearing, and we had an uplink to the International Space Station, and Commander Weissman and Dr. Stockman were talking to us on the committee, and I asked Commander Weissman what inspired him to join the space program, and he said that seeing the shuttle on the 747 inspired him, and I thought, okay, I'm like so old. And as Aaron described, I worked at Lockheed actually before the merger, so that just dates me even more. And I worked on the Space Lab project at Lockheed, and Space Lab is now a museum piece, so that's yet another thing to go dating me. And I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved the whole idea of it. And I remember those early days in the dusty bowels of Building 23 at Goddard Space Flight Center. And we worked above the floor, but mostly we worked below the floor. And I'll never forget that, because it really has helped to create a foundation for me as a member of Congress sitting on our Space Subcommittee and our Science Committee to at least have some understanding of what goes on at NASA, what goes on in our contracting community, and frankly what is happening now in a much more robust and developed commercial space industry. And when I worked in the early 80s at Goddard, you know, obviously so many of your companies really didn't even exist, and this part of the industry wasn't really thought of. And so I think there's a lot of evolution that has already taken place, but it really is just the groundwork for what really needs to happen over the course of time. Jeff Greason and I were having quite a challenging discussion right here, discussing budgets and the relative role and responsibility of government and the private sector, and how to balance those interests. I think those are the challenges that are in front of us right now. One of the things that we actually could agree on, and that is that too often policymakers, members of Congress, the various administrations are asking NASA to do a laundry list of things, and they're not providing the money to do it. And that is just a recipe for failure, and it's almost like it's planned failure when that happens. And I think my challenge to all of you, because I know that you're thinking of NewSpace in a completely different way, but it's really also dependent on having a strong and a vibrant public sector partner so that the private sector can thrive. And I think that we are really challenged as policymakers and as lawmakers of just creating a really big mess, you know, with a whole range of different ideas of things that NASA should do, and not providing the resource base for that to happen in an efficient and an effective way. And so I would challenge each of you to be partners with your partners in the public sector in making that argument to members of Congress, wherever it is that you find them. This year, we were charged with reauthorizing NASA, and of course that broke down on party lines. I mean, there was a time 20, 30 years ago where there were not party line fights over space exploration. And yet that's what things have devolved to today. Fortunately, Steve Palazzo, who is the chairman of our subcommittee, and I did what I do, because I have one over here. We sat down and we had a cup of coffee. And we didn't tell anybody about it. And over that cup of coffee, we went through our various ideas, and we came to a consensus agreement about a NASA authorization. And I think that that provides at least some framework for us working together, not just for 1 year, but for multiple years in the future, that provides some stability and guidance that's necessary both for the agency and for industry. And you know, I think we still have the challenge of trying to figure out like what that next great step is, and where NASA as an agency fits in there, where government fits there, and then where we can step out of the way so that industry really can thrive. When I was with a group of Girl Scouts 2 days ago, and these Girl Scouts were all, you know, challenged with trying to figure out whether they want to be scientists and engineers. And when I talked about the idea of one of them in the room figuring out how they're going to get to Mars, the room was silent because the girls were so excited. And then they were, you know, what girls do, I mean, then it became really loud and a lot of chattering. And the reason is because the American public, despite what we're doing in the Congress and the multiple different charges that NASA has gotten, the public really does buy into the idea that we should be making heavy investments in space. And so we have to take that public enthusiasm and translate that into resources that do something different in 2014 at NASA than was done in 1959. And I don't know what all of those things are, and I think that there needs to be some discussion of that. But the fact is that for our commercial sector really to thrive in the most robust kind of way, it does require a strong federal partner. And policymakers have to understand that. And it's not just a matter of, for me anyway, I mean, these things excite me because I think even though I won't go to Mars, I don't think, or maybe I will. I've been known to joke on our committee that I'd be one of those who would volunteer if I could get out of Congress. I would volunteer to go to Mars without even the prospect of coming back. But that is a joke. But I do think that that it's important for us to figure out the places where we need to step back and how to and figure out how to strike that balance. But our young people are excited by this. When we think about, you know, the Curiosity rover, so many young people, it doesn't matter where you go, they talk about the Curiosity. They're interested in that. And that ought to excite everybody here in this room too, because I think it's a signal that our young people are not nearly as messed up as the Congress is when it comes to making a commitment to space exploration. They are there and we just need to catch up with them. Just this last year, I think there were something like 6,000 applicants for for the astronaut program. And, you know, it does have a way of sort of thrilling young people. Now, for some of them, that might mean lunar exploration, or, you know, just a shot into, you know, lower Earth orbit, or it might indeed mean Mars. But either way, it's really exciting. Over on the Hill 2 days ago as well, there were a lot of researchers who they either had, will have soon, or want to have experiments on the International Space Station. We haven't used the International Space Station in nearly the most robust way that we can, and we need to. But we need you making those arguments to us as well. I did make a promise, and I'm going to have, and it is in the classic form of a member of Congress over-promising more than he or she can deliver, and it was to Reed Wiseman, the ISS commander, and I promised him that I would, he's from Maryland, and I promised him I would figure out a way to get him some crab cakes up there. So Orbital, if you can help me out with a little cargo transportation. You know, in talking about this, about the authorization, I do want to point a couple of things out to you. And one is this notion that we need to develop policy that enables us to think not just 2 years down the line and 3 years down the line, but 20 and 30 years down the line. And Congress is not really good at risk taking, but we should be. And I say this to my colleagues all the time, that there is not a problem in science and exploration if you fail a couple of times, because you learn from failure. And out of failure can come something really exciting. And so that is another message that you could really help us with, because keep in mind, mostly in Congress you have a lot of people who, maybe some who ran small businesses not in the tech sector, or they had insurance companies, or they were real estate lawyers or other kinds of lawyers, but they're not scientists and researchers, and so they don't understand the idea of experimentation and failure and risk, calculated risk, but still risk. And then there are some things that they think about space where they believe there is no risk, and so they don't understand, why does it cost this or cost that, because, you know, we've been doing those things for a long time. And so you have to help us to understand the importance of taking a risk. And when you do, it would really unleash, government, but it would also unleash the private sector. And you know, it's a shame that whenever NASA comes in front of our committee, the FAA too, sorry George, but whenever you all come in front of our committee, we're always asking you about whether we ask you whether you've met this timeline or that timeline. We ask you about how much money it's going to cost. And then, because we don't have a high tolerance for risk, we don't want to hear the answer when you tell us, you know, if you have to tell us that You're not going to be able to get something done in this time frame or at this cost because you encountered some problems that you didn't know before, and you've got to do some more investigation. And so you all have to help us understand the thing that you do so well and that you all do every single day and that you've done in your businesses, and that is take a risk. Also, it was shared with me at lunch. I mean, when you've worked 15 years on a thing, he's looking down at his device right now. When you work 15 years on a thing, but it isn't until that 15th year that something starts to pay off, and then it doesn't seem like 15 years, it seems like just yesterday. Again, that's something that we have to, that we need to understand, and we don't have a great understanding of how that can happen. And so 15 years always seems like a really long way off. We've always been a leader. Americans have been leaders in science and in technology and in space exploration. I don't want us to lose that leadership. I don't want us to lose it to the Europeans. I don't want us to lose it to the Chinese. I don't want us to lose it to the Russians or to anyone else. But the fact is, in all of these other places, they still can't do the kind of things that we can do because we're innovators and because we're creators. And innovation is actually one of my favorite. All my life, I always pick these words that are my favorite words. Innovation is one of my favorite words because it has implied in it this idea of things that are, in fact, start out as ideas and then become something else. And there's nobody better at that than Americans. And so I'm looking forward to the American innovation that's going to allow us to, to develop whatever it is, whether it's manufacturing or settlement or whatever it is, and wherever it is that's not on this earth. And I think that this is the room that's really charged with doing that. And so it's an exciting world and an exciting time. Now, when I first came into Congress, I don't know that I understood all of that. I had been out of the space business for a really long time. And so I had this question, what do you mean there are these like private companies that do this like space stuff? Isn't that stuff that just government does? We had this discussion, so you didn't know that about me, did you? Yeah, I had that question. And so every time, whether it was Orbital or whomever would come to our committee, I would ask these questions like, why are you doing this? And isn't government really funding that anyway? And then I realized that there's not, sort of one interest or one partner, that we have to have both a multifaceted agency. We have to have a well-rounded and robust commercial sector that acts largely independent, but that it requires all of us to be of a mind about what our goals are, what our aspirations are. And I think that the space business is a place where we can be very aspirational. In a lot of sectors, you're not allowed to be aspirational because that gets in the way of your doing a job. But in space, you can be aspirational. And as Americans, we've got a war here and a war there and a conflict here and a conflict there. Space is exactly the kind of thing that we need as Americans so that we can be aspirational. And so that's the part I like about it, because it's not about thinking about today, it's about thinking about tomorrow. And that is what I like the most about space. Now, in Congress, some people come to the Science, Space, and Technology Committee because they want to use it to go someplace else. I'm one of those rare birds. I came to the committee because I wanted to be on the committee, because I wanted to stay on the committee, because I believe in the future, and I believe in what you're doing for the future. When I read through the descriptions of all the different of your panels and the discussions, I thought, man, there's still work for us to do as policymakers as well. We don't have a commercial space launch agreement that is about 2014 and not about like 1995 or something. And so that's work that we need to do. But there's plenty of work to be done, and there's a role for government and there's a role for the commercial side. I don't know what all of those roles are. What I do know is that we still are required to make significant taxpayer investments as well. And it's unfortunate, you know, NASA's budget is about $18 billion a year. And I used to think, before I came to Congress, I thought $18 billion was a lot of money. Now I know it's chump change. And so I think that there's room to argue that even if we increase NASA, although, you know, the weirdest thing, I'll stop here. On our committee the other day, a gentleman, a Republican conservative, fiscal conservative, who's now leaving our committee, argued to put an additional, you know, $4 billion into the space program. And I went up to him on the floor afterwards and I said, "Did you hear what you said?" And he said, "Well, yeah, but I'm on my way out now. I can say those things." Well, we need people who are actually in who say those things, because I think we can't continue to ask NASA and our partners to do so much with, relatively speaking, so little of our federal budget. I go to town hall meetings all the time, and you know, I come from a county that is the home to Goddard Space Flight Center, to a lot of our both commercial sector and to our corporate partners at Goddard. ATK is there, and when I go around to town hall meetings, people will say to me, "You know, we have so many needs. We have needs around education. We have needs of all kinds of social needs. Why do we have to fund the space program? Can't we do without that?" And so I've spent the last 5.5 years going around through my district and really making the argument to the people in my district about why it is that it's important for us to invest in the space program, because it's important for us to invest in the future, because it's important for us to understand that there are going to be, you know, 1 million+ jobs created out of this growing commercial sector, that there's still lots of uncharted territories to explore, that there are things that we need to know about our Earth and about our solar system that will help us better use and preserve our Earth. And now, I don't even get that question anymore. And I think it's an indication of the kind of thing that we need to do all across this country. And those are places where the people in this room are the best positioned to make that argument and that case to the American people. So I wanted to just salute you for all of the work that you're doing. And also, are you all having fun with what you do? Well, good. Because I think it's important that you have fun at what you do. And my limited experience when I worked at Lockheed is that we always had fun at what we were doing. And even times when we would be in development and then it wouldn't work, we still had fun, because we had fun figuring out how to make the systems work. And so I want you to have fun at what you do, but I want you to make sure that in communities all across this country, wherever it is that you can inspire this next generation, and that you can let them know how important it is for us to continue on a pathway of exploration. And like I said, if anybody wants to, you know, I've been arguing to be, you know, there's never been a black woman congresswoman in space. I'm just like telling you. Talk about ever having to create for yourself this like one little niche. But I'm doing that because I never let a time go when I'm on the committee without volunteering myself up. And very recently, my son said to me, "Mom, you know, people call me Moonbeam, the Moonbeam Congresswoman." And I thought it was an insult at first. Well, it was, but I've taken it on as a point of pride, because I believe in what you do. I believe in in the challenges that you've taken on. I believe in the industry, and I believe in NASA. And I think that when we all believe that, what we really believe in is what we believe in our future. And so thank you very much for inviting me today. It looks like I'll still have time to get the rest of that key lime pie. Thank you very much. Thank you, Erin. There was so much conversation. It's so silent now. It's kind of scary. You know, in Congress, when it gets quiet, you get worried. I really appreciate being here. I want to say a special thanks to Erin and Rebecca for making sure that I could get up this morning at 4:30 in the morning and be here in time for lunch. Cheers. I was looking over the agenda, and one of the things that I noticed, and to our friends at ATK, the lightning pitch competition, I really wish I had been here. It's sort of like speed dating for space. But it sounds like you all have had quite a...
Everyone participates in space. Everyone takes advantage. Everyone gets value. And that's where our speaker comes in. It's my pleasure to introduce Donna Edwards. She's the current Congresswoman from Maryland's 4th District. She is the ranking member on the Space Subcommittee. And she's not a new person in space, as many of you know. She actually originally started at Lockheed Martin in the early 80s. So I want to welcome her to come to speak, and I want you to put your hands together for her. I want to thank you. Good afternoon, and I want to thank you for coming to our Saturday luncheon. And we have a really great speaker ahead of us. At an earlier session at the conference, someone made the point. I've actually heard this many times at the conference, and it's certainly core to me, and I think it's core to many of us at the foundation, and more broadly, everyone in industry, everyone who cares about space. What I've heard is what we're trying to do is democratize space. And we want to democratize that for everyone. And that's a really powerful vision, because that means that
a robust and full agenda, and I just appreciate your invitation. You know, for this 2014 conference and for the foundation, you've been doing this for what, 26 years, and I think that I read someplace that you consider yourselves disruptors, which is quite an interesting term for this one member of Congress who came into Congress disrupting a little bit, and so I can identify with that. I want to say hi also to my good friend Gabriel Rothblatt, who's a candidate for the 8th Congressional District in Florida. Is that right? Yeah. Thanks. Good to see you. The Space Coast. Good to see you. You know, I know that for me, space exploration and the idea of space exploration has just been a real passion. I'm one of the sort of, I don't know, black and white television and, you know, Apollo babies. But I was at something, I think it was yesterday. Oh yeah, it was at our space subcommittee hearing, and we had an uplink to the International Space Station, and Commander Weissman and